And the reality is an insight that I may be the only open Bible that many people read in their life. And a personal application is I'm called to model the Master. Called to model the Master. That still waters run deep in my life. Or still water, not my life, still waters run deep in the Lord's life, and I'm called to model that within my life. Be slow to speak, quick to listen. That's still waters, but they run deep as they ran deep with the Lord. Okay. Went through a whole lot the last 2.5 weeks. We have an opportunity now. Linda Batts is going to come up, and Linda, some of you may know, some may not know, for 8 or 9 years you taught at Bible Study Fellowship? Mm-hmm. And you would speak for 45 minutes to an hour?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, that's true.
So, an hour?
No. We're getting you out on time. Don't worry.
Linda's going to do for us an example of the verse by verse. And so you just have to hit the bottom.
Okay. Thank you. Are you glassy-eyed yet? Are you with me? 7 minutes he gave me. I'll get you out on time, I promise. So, the reason I'm so excited about this method of study is that I learned it when I first entered BSF. And it was the very first time that God spoke to me, spoke to my heart. Not through somebody else. I was raised in the Reformed Church. You could honestly say that I attended since I was conceived. Morning and night we were always there. We had a midweek service on Thursday night. I was always there. And then I went to this Bible study and they taught me how to really break down verse by verse and understand what's being said. Oops, I think I bumped something. Thank you, whoever. So anyway, let's get on with how to and get you out on time. The first thing that I would encourage you to do is pray. And it doesn't have to be a long prayer, just a sentence prayer, and say, Lord, help me understand what this says. Lord, give me wisdom. Lord, speak to me. Just a sentence prayer, that's all. Then read your passage, whatever that is, wherever you have decided to study, just pick it up and read. And then we're going to, and this is where the work comes, I really highly recommend that you get a notebook. I brought mine so that you can see that I really do this. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to be there. And I also encourage you to have some kind of piece of paper, just because whenever I start out to try to have a quiet time or a devotion, Satan always brings to mind something I'm supposed to do. Ever have that happen? Your mind wanders. Just write it down. You know, if you need Wheaties from Myers, just write down Wheaties. It'll be there. Your mind can rest with it, and you can focus back on where you're going. So I always keep a pad with me. And so I'm going to take, and then the last step that we're going to do is the applications. And applications are questions that you ask yourself, questions that you get out of the passage, but that you need to respond to. So with that, we'll go, it's really sensitive. Thank goodness for those in the back. Thank you, Kim. So we're going to, I'm going to be reading from Mark chapter 2, and some Bibles, like this one, have red letter editions, so anything that Jesus says is in red letter. If you go and buy a Bible, I'd really recommend a red letter edition, because then you can see right away when Jesus is talking. Red doesn't show up, so we had to use yellow. So the screen is yellow letter edition. So we're turning to Mark chapter 2 and verse 23 through 28. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for the priests to eat. He also gave some of it to his companions. Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." So we're going to look at it, and I tried to change the font. It's in white. Look here. These are my bullet points now that I had. So I go back to verse 23, and I want to remind myself that their Sabbath, or the day they worshipped, was Saturday. So I have it on Saturday, and the disciples are walking along and eating the grain. Now, the law says that we're to observe the Sabbath. To keep the Sabbath holy is really what the Ten Commandments say. But the Jews had taken that a step farther, and the Pharisees prided themselves in their interpretation of the law. They wanted they had rules about how far you could walk, and that you could pick up a needle but you couldn't sew with it, and you could, if you brought something from your household, like a pot with you, you could walk your allotted 3 miles, leave your pot, and then walk another 3 miles, and that was how they got around it. So they're really into all these laws, and they said that you couldn't work, and picking grain was working. So that's why they're pointing out what they thought was the disciples' error, but really Jesus had never said don't pick grain on Sunday. He just said keep the Sabbath holy. So I have the Pharisees in verse 24 saying, look, they're pointing out somebody else's problem. They're really actually wanting to pick a fight. Like, why aren't these guys obeying my rules? And what they're doing is unlawful. So then verse 25 says to me, Jesus is talking now to the Pharisees, and he goes, haven't you read the Old Testament? Well, that would really be like asking Eli Manning, did he know he could pass last week? You know, or asking Betty Crocker, do you need a recipe for that? It is like smack right in the face. It's like, you fools, haven't you read? Kim, do you want to just flip it for me? Thank you. So in my Bible, the cross references that I noticed in the margin of my study Bible were 1 Corinthians 24:6, 1 Samuel 2:1, and 2 Samuel 8:17. If I were going to do that, I would read it. For the sake of time right now, I'm not going to go there, but you would definitely want to check those cross references when they're in your Bible. And then so that was 26 and 27, and then 25 and 26 should have been grouped together. 27 said, Jesus says to them, the Sabbath is made for man. Now I take that mankind, man and woman, in other words, you and me, us. So Jesus said the Sabbath is made for man. And so, verse 28, the Son of Man, Jesus, is Lord even on the Sabbath. So then I get to my questions that I want to ask myself. And I ask myself, where do I need Jesus' authority to change me? Jesus is using his authority here to challenge the Pharisees and say, wait a minute, not you are in charge of the Sabbath, but I, the Son of Man, am. So then I look at this, and as he's talking to the Pharisees, I'm thinking, is there anywhere I'm messing up that Jesus needs to change me? Does Jesus have authority in my life? Do I give him that place of authority that he needs? Do any of my actions need a check? Or to whom am I pointing? Am I trying to point out somebody else's wrong? Or am I pointing them to Jesus? So these are all questions that we can ask ourselves as we go through. And then lastly, the final slide kind of shows up. My summary then, the final statement, the final thing is Jesus is Lord of all. That's the lesson that I learned from this. He's not only Lord of the Sabbath, but he's Lord of the Pharisees. He's Lord of the disciples. He's Lord of this book, from the history to the poetry to the letters in the New Testament. He is Lord of all. He is Lord of Linda. My mind, my will, my emotions, my behavior,